Hey everyone, hopefully you're having a good day. My name's Andy. My channel's Finding Value. If you guys are looking for undervalued investment opportunities, click subscribe to the channel. Love for all of you guys to join me and everyone else in the community on this big bull market in commodities ride higher. So ride it with me and everyone else in the community. Today we're going to talk about uranium, technical analysis. I'm going to do a big long-term picture view on it, and I'm going to describe why this stuff is important. So in technical analysis, what we're looking for is we're looking for patterns, we're looking for downtrend breaks, we're looking for anything where buyers and sellers are fighting each other. And what that does, if they're fighting each other at a certain point, whether it's a trend line that's going down on a diagonal or it's flat, wherever it is, it basically provides a ceiling on price. It provides resistance. So if you're a person and you've got a ceiling above you, it's going to take some time to break through that ceiling. You're going to have to use a hammer, a sledgehammer. You're going to be hitting this thing and knocking it all down. And when you create a hole, you kind of burst on through it. Most of the time what happens is you want to sit on top of it because you're tired from all the work that it took to get through that ceiling. And in relationship, it's the buyers interacting with the sellers at a certain price where there's a battle that's occurring. That's what we're trying to break through. The buyers have to overwhelm the sellers there, and it may take a lot of buyers to do that. And if the buyers run out, what happens is it rests either below or above that trend line. If it breaks through, a lot of the times it rests on top of the trend line, and it takes a little while before it moves on up. And you get this resting period where it doesn't really do much, the stock. And a lot of people, what happens is they lose interest in the stock. They say, oh, it's not going anywhere, sell out of it. And sometimes some stocks, it may take a little while to rest. It may take a month or two or longer. Some, it takes a very short period. It may only take a week or two, and then it fires on off. Or some, they're so strong and the buyer-seller imbalance is so great that it just blows right through that trend line like it wasn't even there. Sometimes. But most of the time, it acts as resistance. And that's what we're looking for. And these big patterns, they develop over, it could be weeks, it could be years or months. The bigger the pattern, the bigger the break, the bigger the move after. And we're looking at uranium. These uranium patterns are gigantic. They are many years long, maybe even a decade long or more. And what happens is they break the pattern, they get tired, and then they rest there for a little bit. The stocks will rest and they're tired, and they'll lose interest in it. And that's when I step in and I buy their shares as people are selling because the stock isn't moving. And then eventually, whenever that time comes, the stock goes up, and it can be quite dramatic because you just broke a very large trend line. So the way I have it for this presentation today is I have ones where they launched from pads. And what I mean by a launching pad, you break through the trend line, you break through the ceiling. So you go from inside the ceiling or in a room, you break through the ceiling, and now you're on top of the room. And what happens is it rests, and eventually you jump from that ceiling up. It gives you a launching pad to jump from, this big base of a room or whatever it is, whatever the analogy you want to use. It provides that base to jump from and move from. And these big patterns, there's a reason that the buyers are equaling the sellers at certain prices, and that the buyers are starting to outnumber the sellers and break through everything. So it means something that's, what I'm showing you is significant. It has significant meaning. And I'll go through all these patterns and kind of describe it as the way that I know it. So let's jump in. This is uranium. This is just technical analysis. We're doing long-term charting here. This is the perspective that I think you need to have, is a long-term view. And these are going to be things that we're probably going to trade for many years, not months or weeks, years. And you can be successful trading these on a week to month basis, but I'm looking at it from a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year hold. And what are we looking for in these charts is exactly what I described. We're looking for patterns, we're looking for trend lines, we're looking for things to break. And again, this is financial education only. You guys have to do your own due diligence. So we'll jump right in. I'm going to start with Appiah Energy. And what we're looking for are those big pattern breaks, the ceiling. And this one's a resistance line that just runs across. And the stronger the ceiling, the more times you hit it. So we hit it once here, twice there, and then we were playing with the ceiling. We kind of broke out, but we got tired. You couldn't make it. Too many sellers up there. We came back in, and basically we're creating like a cup and handle pattern here. We broke out again. There's too many sellers. It came back and touched the ceiling again, and then we just took off. The sellers were overwhelmed by the buyers, and the stock runs. And then you create these other patterns over time, and it runs again. So this down here is the launching pad for this to happen. And it takes time. This didn't happen overnight. So if it broke through and it came back, you can accumulate shares in here. That's the smart thing to do, and to be patient. And then eventually you're rewarded with the move coming up on the upside there. Now, what we're seeing are these big launching pads. And I'm going to show you a bunch of pads that we launched from already in uranium to show you that it's a valid pad to launch from. So here's Global Atomic. This one, I would say, already launched, and it's moving on up. And, you know, I don't know if I would chase it up here. I mean, it is up there. I own it. I'm not going to sell it. But what we can see is we see a large move up, a little pullback, a little bit less move up, pullback, the same move up, pullback, a little less, pullback. This could come down a little bit. This could have a pullback at some point here on a big long-term, like not a big long-term pullback. We could see a pullback, which this creates a first leg, this entire move. But I can see that the legs are getting smaller as we go up, and it's starting to roll over a little bit. So we could pull back a little bit or go sideways for a little while before moving higher. And it's probably going to happen because we're so far away from the ceiling that we broke through in the base, so to speak. Here's Fortis Metals. I just drew this in kind of where it hit. We had a lot of hits in here. We came up and below, more hits over here. I mean, it's somewhere in this range. We broke out, pulled back, and then we took off. And this is looking very good for a long-term hold. In the short term, this could very well, pull back a little bit or move sideways. I'm not exactly sure on the short term, but on the long term, we broke the base, and it looks okay. It looks good. And remember, uranium is cheap. So here's another one, Forum Energy Metals. You can see that base again that's formed. It breaks it, and then it moves on up. So that's looking good. International Consolidated Uranium, this base looks a little bit different. We have a downtrend. It broke out, and it was relaxed, and it was like, you know what? Let me chill. Let me get a couple of drinks in me before I start moving, right? So it's chilling, going sideways, and then you could draw another line through here, and then boom, it breaks. And it's like, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya, hitting the turbo as it leaves us. This is Uranium Royalty Corp, another one. You can see it just was going sideways, 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 and all of a sudden it broke out, and it's like game on, and then it's running. And then you can see a big move here, less of a move here, and a less of a move here. It was getting tired. The buyers are starting to equal the sellers as those big, long up movements started to contract. And then eventually it rolled over, and it's just resting, kind of getting a little bit of a pullback sideways motion right now. So that's Uranium Royalty Corp. Here's Sky Harbor Resources. So I threw in the big trend line. Now this is a pretty big chart. I mean, the volatility from bottom to top is massive. So we've got this ceiling that it's creating. Hit its head, pulled back. Hit its head, pull all the way back. This is probably a double bottom. You can see this in the chart of gold. If you guys are watching gold, it did this little double bottom just like this, and then it launched from this double bottom. And we're trying to break through this ceiling right here. It's hitting its head, pulled back, hitting its head. It usually does this little U-shaped hit like this. You can see it tried pulling up, too many sellers, pulled back. It could pause a little bit here, but I think we're going to punch through, and you may see it pause above it because this is a very strong trend line, resistance line. So we'll punch through, probably rest a little bit, and then eventually use it as a launching pad to jump from. Here's Peerpoint Uranium Group. This is an exploration company, a lot more risk with this. All the exploration companies have more risk. This is in Canada. It's in the Athabasca region with where all the high grade uranium is at. Draw the line across, and this is what gets me excited, because this one is still hitting its head. I mean, it's just popping. It popped through, pulled back, and I think it's going to kind of do this U-shaped pattern, which it's like a cup and another little cup pattern, and then I think we'll break through eventually. So this one, we poke through, pull back, and it's ready to probably run at it again. Gobiax Uranium, here's another one. You draw the trend line across, hit its head, or created, I should say, this trend line. And then we're kind of moving on up. And this is going to go all over the place. It's going to be volatile down here. We haven't broke through it yet, but if you're patient and you want to accumulate shares on the cheap, I think eventually this will break through and we'll see a large move higher. This is a base to launch from. And this is what I look for in bottoms. Here's Denison Resources. You're looking at, remember, this big picture viewpoints. 2013, draw the line across. And we broke through this first line. If you draw through it this way going down, it broke through that, pulled up, and it hit this sticky portion where there's a bunch of buyers and sellers back here. So we're hitting the buyers and sellers. We're trying to go through. We broke through. It got tired. We're going sideways again, and eventually I think we'll come out of this. This is all kind of the natural process of companies breaking through these buying and selling points previously. That's what you have to endure buying these undervalued commodity companies. You kind of have to go all the way back through where all these buyers and sellers are. And the further you go back into time, the less buyers and sellers there'll be. So it'll be a little less sticky than, say, these ones that are closer in time. Here's Fission 3.0, drawing the trend line across here. We broke out, and it's very normal to kind of go sideways after this. It took a lot of energy to get through here. And we'll go sideways, and we'll probably eventually slowly turn higher. So this is one that I own. I accumulate a little bit. This is an exploration company, much higher risk. I'm not dumping all my money in this. So it's very small amounts, spreading my bets across all of these. You know, the Peerpoint, the Sky Harbor, the Fission 3.0. I'm getting all of them and spreading them around. Here's another one, Laramide. We're going through, we're hitting our head on all this. We have this pattern going down this way. It broke that, rested a little bit, and then said, okay, it's time to go. We're moving on up, and we still have all this resistance all through here. And we've got another line that you can create through here that we're going to have to break through. Again, be patient here. What I do is I slowly accumulate shares, cost average in, and then over time, this I think will eventually work its way through all these resistance lines and move on higher. Here's Camco. This one's pretty straightforward, downtrend line. It broke through it, back tested, retested. It had to rest a little bit and then took off. It jumped from this launching pad. So that looks good. Encore Energy, we've got this long, big basing pattern that happened. Lots of movements down here. When we broke out, we went sideways a little bit longer and then took off. The buyers overwhelmed the sellers, and it had to rest a little bit. The buyers equaled the sellers through here as the buyers wore out the sellers. And now we're coming up on this other kind of, I put a line up here, another little last resistance area where if it breaks through, there's not much resistance up here. So could be a fun little ride when we break through this. And again, eventually this thing's going to pull back a little bit or go sideways because this has had a monster move so far. Here's Deep Yellow. Now this one I am very excited about because you've got the sideways movement going across. You've got the pattern that this created, and we're just about to break out. So you could say that we're like somewhere in here. And it could go sideways like this. Maybe it breaks out and goes up like that. But we're in a earlier stage. An earlier stage than the other companies. So this one looks pretty good. I like it quite a bit there. Uranium Energy Corporation looks like a cup bowl shape with a little handle that's forming, and we're trying to break out to the upside of it. So that looks really good. Here's Denison Mines. Denison Mines is doing the same thing. So it's trying to break through here. and move on up. So that looks pretty good. Kind of a cup and bowl, cup and handle pattern. And this has had a big move higher. So we'll see what happens. UEX Corporation, another uranium. This is more of a developer / exploration company. Draw the trend line across, and look what we've got. Hit her head, creating this ceiling, hit her head again. It didn't break through, broke through, back tested, and now we're moving on up. So that one looks really good for a good hold. Fission Uranium, the main company with the RRR project, downtrend line, broke out, back tested, had to rest. Remember, we had to break through this ceiling and rest a little bit. Came back up, and now we're moving. Looking good. Next Gen Energy, you can see the downtrend line here. Broke through it. It rested a little bit. Gone. See ya. Here's centrist. Centrist, you've got the line going across. This is a base to jump from. Broke through. It came up, said, I'm too tired. Let's go back. Rested a little bit longer, and then took off. And now it rested through here, and I bet you we're going to see it take off again. That looks good. Paladin Energy, I didn't draw the line in here. Going across all the way, and it's about to break this bottom pattern. So this one looks good too. PALAF. And then I've got Blue Sky Uranium. I did this in a different one. Draw the trend line in. It broke the trend line, and remember, it needs to rest a little bit. It may even pull back a little bit more. But this is where I like to buy. I like to buy after it breaks the trend line, breaks through it, we're good. Now it's just a matter of time, cost average in a little bit, and hold on. So that's what it looks like on the long term. That's how I view the stocks. I view them through the long term. I view them through these charts right here. I look at how the buyers are interacting with the sellers. I look for these big long-term downtrend lines and patterns to be broken. Once they're broken, they sit there for a little bit, and people get discouraged and impatient. And that's where an educated, more experienced investor, we just look at it and say, accumulate and hold on. I don't try to say it's dead. I don't say that it's going nowhere, because what happens is the inexperienced investors, it breaks out, it kind of sits there for a little bit, and then all the inexperienced investors basically offload their shares to more experienced investors before the big move higher. And then eventually those inexperienced investors will look at those stocks that they sold and say, oh man, I shouldn't have sold it. And then they come jumping back in, creating more demand, pushing it even higher. So I'm in the camp where I like to be patient. I see the downtrend break, and I just accumulate shares. Doesn't matter the company. And I accumulate all the ones, I call it, quote, the laggards. So we've got some companies here that I showed you that are the leaders. They took off. They're gone. They're moving. I'm looking at these ones that are kind of sitting back there. They're exploration companies. Some of the other companies like Laramide, they might be developing mines or whatever it is. And I'm just sprinkling money across them. Sprinkle some money. I'll buy this. Maybe it's a couple $100, couple $100. Depends how many there are. If it's a whole bunch, I just keep piling in over time. I'm cost averaging, and Blue Sky is one of them. And I cost average in, I hold on. The sector, when the uranium starts to move, excitement starts to come up, more money starts piling in, and these will take off. And then when people start seeing them take off, they get more confident, and they'll start putting more money in those. So investing is more about you than it is about the markets. It's about you, because you have to handle your emotions. You have to be the one buying and selling. And what I do is I notice these types of patterns. I accumulate them. I accumulate them like I want to be a part of that company. I look at it as a piece of the company. And if we're going to go into a uranium bull market where uranium's never been this cheap in relationship to other assets, I want to partake in it. And I want to be part of some of these companies. That's how I view it. I don't view it as I'm trying to make 20% or 30% or 100 or 200%. That's the eventual outcome. I view it as I want to partake in this uranium bull market with these people. Put money in it and let it ride. If you guys like this content, give me a thumbs up. Thanks for listening. This is Finding Value.